Hello, welcome to this is our first edition of our new exciting podcast. We decided to take a little bit of a pivot off of the chip chat, which everybody loved to call in and make fun of me about, and talking about real estate in Louisville, Kentucky. And we're now going to really focus on what's going on in the crypto, blockchain, and real estate market and how they all interrelate and what we can do to leverage some of these technologies that are available and learn. That's really the focus of this podcast, is to bring on thought leaders in the space that we've been working with and have them tell their story, talk about what they're doing in the space, and help us understand where things are going as it relates to cryptocurrency, blockchain, and real estate. So I'm excited to bring in our first guest. This was a big get for us in the sense that Sam has a ton of experience in the space itself and is really at the forefront when it comes to what is happening as business intersects with blockchain, intersects with real estate, and how these use cases are going to be. So Sam, I'd like to introduce you, bring you in, and let you talk a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate it, Chip. Happy to be here. Happy to be on here. So, yeah, my name is Samuel Arms. I am the president of the Florida Blockchain Business Association, which I've been running now since about 2017. My background comes in government. I originally did some research at United States Special Operations Command on Bitcoin and counter threat finance and illicit activities. Had a quick stint at the State Department doing research on blockchain and cryptocurrency policy. Worked at a lobbying firm here in Florida for a little bit, and then decided that there was a big gap between what government understood in the crypto space, but then there's also a big gap in the cryptocurrency world and them kind of having an understanding of what our legislative process was. So back in 2017, early 2018, I founded the Florida Blockchain Business Association, which we've been running ever since. We literally just passed our third bill 2 days ago, which is now hopefully going to be signed by Governor DeSantis. And Florida's session, which is 60 days, actually ends tomorrow. So we had this chat at the perfect time. But yeah, so I've been involved in practically everything going on here in Florida. As many know, Florida is quickly becoming, I think, the cryptocurrency and blockchain capital of not only the United States, but I think the world as well, with all the people moving here. So happy to be here and happy to talk about anything and everything.
Well, that's awesome, and really impressive resume in such a short time, how you've been able to start FBBA and get it off the ground. And I'm a member and participate in the real estate side. Even though I'm seated here in Kentucky, get to jump on some calls with you and the team. Wish I was down in Florida more often. I'm actually going next week to Tampa. We've got an office there, and a buddy of mine actually has a birthday, so it's a work play
Oh,
trip
good
that
deal.
I'm super excited about. But talk a little bit about the government piece of it, because I think, as I and some of my peers have gotten involved, really one of the biggest challenges is that government engagement and legislatively, getting the legislators to first engage. Obviously, education's a huge piece of it, and then delivery. And what's so exciting is you're actually going through all those steps. We see a lot of discussions, but we're not seeing as much action, especially at the national level. I know there was an executive order, and you can maybe fill us in a little bit on that as well. But give us a little bit behind the scenes on the legislative piece and what you've been doing on that side.
Yeah, I mean, the legislative side's interesting, especially being in the United States. Each state has a different framework that you kind of have to go through and develop, right? And Florida is very unique in and of itself, but government is very broad, right? So we work with city, county, state, and federal government officials and entities when it comes to anything having to do with crypto and blockchain kind of advocacy or policy, right? So a lot of people ask me, where's the best place to start? So there's advantages and disadvantages to kind of working with each side of government. But the advantage of city and county is you can be far more influential in your own city and county, right? That's where everyone's kind of a well-known name and face. You have better and easier contact you can kind of get more stuff done. Of course, you can only get so far in the city and county level, right? Because obviously it's the state and it's the federal government that are making a lot of your regulations. But if you look at what Mayor Suarez has done in Miami, I mean, that is proof that just a city can make a huge impact. And now, because of what he's done, his city policy has made an impact on state policy, right? So the hardest part about government is sometimes people are like, oh, where do I start? But just starting somewhere is often kind of the best case. And so we kind of run that model here in Florida, where we are working with different cities, counties outside of the state legislature. Now, of course, the state side is a process. I mean, each state is its own government. You have a House, you have a Senate, and then you have the governor. And so that process is quite lengthy because you not only have to find a House representative to sponsor your bill, you have to find a Senate representative to sponsor your bill. And once you go through all the hurdles to get that bill kind of sponsored and written up, which takes quite a bit of time in and of itself, and now you're assigned committees and you have to go through each committee on each side in order to pass that legislation, right? And that's just to get it to the House and Senate floor. Once you get it to the House and Senate floor, you have to get it voted on there. And then you still have the chance that the governor might not sign it, right? And so it's just constant education, constant advocacy. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, there's a lot of bills that die. And that's part of why the process is the way it is, right? We don't want government to rush into anything. We want it to be kind of a long, drawn out process. But that's hard because when you're in tech and you're innovating so quickly, you kind of want to push the envelope at least faster in some cases than other people are. But it always ends up working out because I think a lot of tech innovators are able to operate within parameters and innovate without breaking any laws. But then you get to the federal level. And, my specialty, I was not a fan of living in DC. Part of why I moved back to Florida. I love it here. I love focusing on the state level. The federal level is a whole nother ball game. It's very slow. It's very complicated, obviously bigger players. But given that we're in Florida, we have a lot of congressmen and our senators who are actively involved in the crypto and blockchain space. The congressional chair of the Congressional Blockchain Caucus, Darren Soto, is here in Orlando. And his team are incredibly active. So just by nature of that, we kind of have our foot in the door of some of this federal policy, which, like I said, is a totally different ballgame. And there's very good associations like the Blockchain Association and the Digital Chamber of Commerce, who I think do plenty good job in advocating for us on those federal levels. The EO is interesting because technically any words that come from the president that aren't outright banning Bitcoin are viewed as positive. Or
the bar's pretty low, isn't it?
It is a very low bar. So that's why what's funny to me is I would traditionally say there's nothing positive in Biden's EO that I saw. It all kind of hints toward, so the language is promotion of the US dollar. So they're worried about illicit finance, they're worried about consumer protection, they're worried about the environment, and they're worried about the US dollar's dominance in the space, which is probably a conversation outside of this small talk we're having, but it really begins to show you that certain currencies like Bitcoin are geopolitical currencies, right? I mean, you have everything going on in Russia and Ukraine and talks of Russia switching financial systems, getting cut out of SWIFT, looking to alternative currencies. So this EO wasn't simply because, it's time to, look at the cryptocurrency community. It's exactly time because of what's going on in the world, especially given we're having inflation rates like we've never seen in a very long time. So with all those factors at play, the U.S.'s concern, or the U.S. establishment's concern, is obviously how do we keep the dollar on top? So there's a lot of positive language in there, but if you kind of read in between the lines, it's not necessarily friendly toward decentralized finance. It's not necessarily friendly toward truly decentralized cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or privacy coins like Monero, because they're starting to feel the heat. Not only from internally, as Americans might be looking for ways to get out of the dollar if inflation continues to go haywire. But then externally, having other countries circumvent your financial system, which is, where the U.S. gets a lot of its power from. So, like I said, Congress is the congressional level, the federal level is a very different perspective. I keep in tune with it, but obviously I don't have to worry about that necessarily when I'm working on the state level.
No, that's really interesting, and I appreciate you giving us the 1,000 foot view, which is local, and then zooming out into the federal. And my perspective is as people were texting or emailing me yesterday regarding what's going on with the executive order and this and I definitely agree with you in the sense that almost in some cases it's just as long as it's not a hard stop on something and give the groups that are involved in the technology side an opportunity to really show use cases and give them some runway to demonstrate value because sometimes I'm afraid when we start talking to people in the real estate space, especially in the title space and legal space, when you mention the word cryptocurrency, they put up a lot of barriers. It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's the Silk Road. And so you have to sort of. I oftentimes you'll hear me. I'll lean into blockchain and digital currency, and I won't say
Yep.
the word crypto because it just becomes a political volleyball. So I think that the key takeaway there with regard to the executive order is there's continuing ongoing exploration. I do think we all agree we want clarity as much as clarity can be given from the federal government. I've been on several calls recently with some financial institutions, and there's a lot with the OCC, the Office of Controller, Currency Controller, that people, these banks are so regulated, and they're candidly very compliance oriented and risk averse, and they're just looking for what are the buoys. Like I can ride the boat, but I need to know what are the guidelines. And if it just says, well, we expect you to have the right support systems in place to make sure everything goes right, well, that's a little loose. That doesn't give people especially bankers a lot to go off of. So hopefully they'll continue. So going back though, if specifically as it relates to the FBBA and some of the things. So let's talk a little first about the bill that you've won. How long did it take, and what exactly does this bill is doing for what the purpose and the causes that you're working on? And then is there anything else that right now that you feel like is pretty close to incubation stage that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, so the third bill that we just finally passed and are waiting the governor to sign, had everything to do with money transmission. So there's just a famous court case called the Espinoza case that took place here in Miami, Florida, that essentially just said peer-to-peer transactions required a money transmitter license, which is interesting, especially even when you get into digital assets and tokens, which of course apply to real estate and kind of the NFTs that we're talking about. The question is, if those are financial assets to some extent or not, do you need a money transmitter license to do that? Right? It really depends, right? As we know. And so our bill essentially just clarified that if it's a peer-to-peer transaction, you don't need a license to do that, right? We also just redefined virtual currency in the legislature, and then we added in the law, and then we added language that made it just friendlier for crypto exchanges, right, to be here. So it's a very convoluted, kind of boring bill, but if we wanted to move forward on some more innovative ideas, we had to get this bill passed because it was very foundational. So I think next year I'm already getting hit up on different ideas to kind of push the envelope here in Florida. Of course, it is an election year, so that plays a lot into what we'll be able to do and what we won't be able to do. Because by the time it's time to look at the bill, so the election's in November, well, Florida session is just about 3 to 4 months after that, if even, right? So you're working with sometimes a third of the people are new, right? And it's like, okay, time to get them up to speed on what we're doing, what the new cryptocurrency stuff is, and whatnot. So we're just thankful to get that bill passed, to make Florida kind of more in line with a lot of other states.
No, that's great, and I think that's uh, super exciting for all people that are in the space to, just to see progress. I mean, that once again, I come back to advancing the football, so to speak, and let's see where we end up. Talking about working with businesses, what are you and the FBBA doing to really engage with businesses that are using blockchain as a technology and also operating within the cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, digital asset space? What are some of the things that the FBBA does to either promote businesses to come to Florida or to just enhance what they're doing beyond the legislation piece, which is obviously super important?
Luckily, the Florida promotion has been incredibly easy, as I haven't had to reach out to anybody. I'm the one who's getting reached out to.
Right.
And that's not even within the United States. I had a company call me. I've had a few companies call me from London. I had a company call me from South Africa. I had a company call me from Germany, all kind of saying, "Hey, we're thinking about setting up in Florida, and just want to get a feel for what it's like and where you would recommend, and is all this true? What are you guys doing?" So the the promotion has been incredibly easy. The hard part is one, getting them ingrained in the community if they decide to come here, right, and really kind of establishing that network. And so we have members and like meetup groups throughout the entire state. So normally, if someone's moving to almost any part of the state, they're at least within 30 miles of someone that I know that I can connect them to who's running some kind of group, right? And that immediately plugs them in and helps them kind of grow synergies with the people in their area, which I think is one of the biggest benefits, right? I mean, if you, no matter what your crypto blockchain play, if you can move to an area and then meet 10 other business owners, I mean, there's at least one of them who can help you with what you're doing, right? In some sort of way, or at least, take interest in what you've got going on. So we're always trying to promote our members. A lot of times we try to bring them to Tallahassee. I know next year we're planning a big event at the Capitol during the session, to kind of showcase them. And then we run 3 events every year. We have one in Miami, one in Orlando, and one in Tampa, each with a kind of different event, a different focus, I should say. And that's where we try to highlight our members as best as we can as well.
Oh, awesome! That's all good stuff. Talk a little bit about what you see sort of coming opportunities as we look into the next 2022, 2023. Where is the FBBA and are your efforts really focused on, and can you interweave real estate into any of those discussion points? Because as we sit, we see so many things going on specifically in greater Miami. We also know Proppy did the NFT sale in Tampa, which was really cool. There's just activity boiling up in all areas, and curious because you've got a front row seat, and you're onboarding and engaging with some of these groups, and sort of connecting some dots, which I've seen you do really well, and we'll talk about that in a second. But go ahead.
Yeah, honestly, once again, it's a perfect storm because of all the people moving here. Real estate in Florida has become crazy. I mean, just absolutely crazy with everyone kind of migrating here. And then a lot of the people in the crypto world are here. So obviously there's overlap in those plays, right? So you see a lot of developers now thinking, okay, should I be NFTing my property, or should I be releasing some kind of tokenization mechanism related to my real estate? Because we're having all these conferences. I mean, geez, there's probably a conference every week in Miami that has to
Yeah.
do with crypto in some way or fashion. And I'm always learning about a new one. And I'm like, hey, someone tells me you're going to this. I'm like, didn't even know about it. And it's got like 500 people
Yeah.
going. I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Um, so they're going to these conferences, they're networking and realizing, okay, all this tokenization, all this decentralization, we can actually make a play for this in the real estate space and actually do something kind of cool. With the furthest stretch of that being, of course, the metaverse now, and not even real estate, but digital real estate. I mean, one of the people at my conference, they're a group that buys plots of land in the metaverse, in different metaverse platforms, and then develops that land. So much like you would in the real world, they're buying up digital real estate and they're trying to make it cool by adding different parks or buildings and trying to upsell their valuable land in the metaverse to then resell it. And so they're using that vehicle to fund some of these metaverse plays, and it's crazy. It's awesome, right? But a lot of these people are here in Florida, so I mean that's the one side. The other side, which is quote unquote more boring, but just an innovative, is okay. Can I use my Bitcoin or my Ethereum as collateral to buy a home? Right? Because now you have all these tokens and you have this whole movement of people who don't want to sell. And so now it's like, okay, are you willing to put up your crypto as collateral and take out a loan for that? And something as simple as that is incredibly innovative in the real estate space, because the next 5 years, how many people are going to be saying, okay, the collateral I have is these 10 Bitcoin that I've been holding on to, and I don't want to sell any of them. So how do I get a loan to buy a home? Right. So both are innovative, but both, I think, different sides of that scale as far as kind of how unique they are.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You touch on a lot of connecting the dots all the way to the metaverse, which I'm still sort of wrapping my older brain around. It's funny, my kids, they've grown up in the metaverse because they're huge gamers and playing different, Fortnite being sort of the one that I hear the most when they're down screaming in the basement and so forth. But so they're that's like just in the DNA. And so I
Mhm.
think, as people talk about the metaverse and how it's going to intersect, I think the generational, it's just it's a natural progression. But as it relates to using cryptocurrency as an asset and potentially either investing or diversifying into real estate, we see that as a very front of mind use case that is going to be a natural progression, just as people in the past have used stocks and bonds and portfolio loans to do asset diversification. And it's interesting because I think my opinion is sometimes people actually overthink some of those things. And so when we sort of distill it down for them and just say, wait a minute, quit thinking of Bitcoin in this sort of esoteric way, and they just want to focus on potentially volatility or what have you. And we come back to, like any asset, there's going to be fluctuations in what the pricing looks like and so forth. You can't, if that's your focus point, you're going to lose sense of really what the use can be and how you can actually leverage it, and it can be a real tool in your on your balance sheet or your portfolio, what have you. And then taking on the tokenization, Sam, we have over the last 6 months, I've really become a lot more keenly engaged in those. Honestly, we were a bit, as a title group, a bit hands off because it was tied to that security discussion. And being that we're not securities brokers, and candidly, there's a lot of fear that comes into when you start saying the word security and you're in the title business or whatever, and you're not licensed and so forth. You're like, oh, this just spells compliance, fine, whatever.
Mhm.
You're like, I'm going to be on the front page of the title report
Yeah.
for break. So it's been really helpful for me. There's a lot going on over in Europe and other places, and how they're utilizing. And there's so much value enhancement that can be created through tokenomics, whatever you want to call them, and using NFTs, and the price exploration, discovery, transparency, and the efficiency gained of being able to use the blockchain and cryptocurrency as an element for transactional purposes is just, it's a huge enhancement. So we're excited, and it's good to see a community a state like Florida and specifically a community like Miami really lean into the space. And to your point, the conferences are crazy. Well, before we let you go, I do want to ask you a little bit, for our listeners' sake, give them some, maybe some, you talked about conferences, we can hit on that. And then other places that they can go learn more about blockchain and cryptocurrency and what's going on with your group and what you're doing.
Yeah, and of course, everyone has a preference on education, right? So, one, like I said, we host three conferences a year. The most recent one's going to be on April 5th in Miami, right before Bitcoin 2022. RE Block Miami is the name of it. So, if anyone's interested in that, they're more than welcome to come and look us up online. If you're looking for, I mean, people can always Google this stuff, right, and watch YouTube videos, but I always find the best way to learn is to find a local group of people, normally on meetup.com or some kind of passionate group, because you can learn so much more by having a face-to-face conversation with someone, I think, than by just constantly reading articles online. And then a lot of these people, because they're in the business, they get it because they have to get it because it's what they're making a living from. And that really kind of makes it seem more grounded and real instead of, like you were saying, just how it can seem very ethereal, right? Just kind of out there in the space, something that you don't understand. But when you meet someone who's actually using it and developing it, then it's like, oh, I kind of get it. Right. So I think those in person groups, which if you're in any major metropolitan area, you're bound to have one. Starting there is often the best.
No, that's good stuff. A couple of comments I would have too, as it intersects with that. I started when I was first sort of crypto curious or blockchain curious. I started really with some podcast, and that was super helpful. I know we're on a podcast, so I'm sort of plugging ourselves, but it was good to hear. There's a bunch of them out there, and you have to be mindful of sort of the source. What are they?
Mhm.
What potentially underlying promotion is going on. But on the whole, there's some really good information that you can garner out of that if that's the way you like to. But I'm with you. I think more and more what you're seeing as more and more people are coming into the space and you're getting the thing that I love about it. And if you go to some of these conferences, it is a very diverse group. You've got people that are very technical minds. You've got candidly sort of people that are trading minds. You've got, then you've got like the Bitcoin maximalists, which are fun to talk to, and
Yeah.
sort of the world's coming to an apocalyptic end. I was like, I hope you're not right, but man, you might be onto something. I was like, all
Yeah.
that. So it's to me, it has been extremely re re-energizing almost to like unleash this new technology that you're just watching evolve in front of your very eyes. And I wasn't. I'm older, obviously, but we were there first when Google and some of that was coming out, and you could feel it, but you didn't necessarily know it. So it's fun to be sort of in on this and be part of it. Well, I want to give any last thoughts before we jump off of here. If you want to give your contact information, how people can get in touch with you, Sam, and then anything else before we jump off. This has been awesome. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the best way to reach me is normally either on LinkedIn, where you can find me. My name's just Samuel Arms, Armes on there, or my email is just sam@fbba.io. And I normally always get back to you at least within the week. Of course, during our conferences, I'm just inundated with material going in and out, but we always do our best. And my mission is if I don't know something, I know someone who does. So I'm always sending people one direction or another.
And I will say that's the final statement for me is one thing that I really picked up on early on when I first was introduced to Sam is he is a connector, which I think is such a valuable piece of what people do. Is Sam's actually introduced me to several people. He's actually referred some younger tech people that I've just gotten to know and really enjoy talking to and meeting with, and that's for what this ecosystem enables us to do. It's so important that people are interacting, but you're meeting new people. You're learning about new opportunities, maybe new ideas, new use cases. So, Sam, kudos to you for that. Thank you for being on the podcast. You're going to be your episode 1, season 1, and this has been a great way to start.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, Chip.
Thank you.